Fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. We will now pass the basket. This is a weekly STEP meeting. Our format is as follows. A speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on the STEP of that week, followed by discussion or questions until 7 p.m. You can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group at Doylestown. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share. That brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting. On this day of September 25th, year 2023, in Doylestown, PA, at the Monday night 6 p.m. Stay Alive Literature and STEP Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is...
Hi, my name's Eric. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Eric.
I appreciate the introduction and thank you for having me be in service. And it's nice to be in this church. This church was an intricate and very strong part of the early foundation of my recovery. My home group was initially a Conscious Contact Speaker Group, which meets here 8:30 every Saturday night. And it was really a great place for me to practice exactly what it is I am here doing today. So I'm grateful to that process and to that meeting and just Alcoholics Anonymous in general. It is truly a blessing to be here and to even have the confidence to feel like I could help somebody. When I first got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't really feel like I could help people, like I could carry a message of hope and recovery. I more so identified with a person who felt as though they were a burden, and it was very difficult for me to live in the reality of what my life was, you know, and I was absolutely a lost soul, and I didn't have a significant amount of hope, but there were people in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous who were carrying a message of hope and recovery, doing 12-step work, whether they realized it or not, in those conversations around the coffee, before the meeting, after the meeting, during the meeting, all of this stuff. And I'm incredibly grateful for that process. So it's awesome to be here and to be a part of this lifestyle. As far as the 12-step is concerned, you know, it talks about having had a spiritual awakening, and I mean, I wouldn't even know what that was when I got here. It just sounded like some kind of like, like, oh yeah, spiritual awakening. I don't know, like a mythological creature or something that in fairy tale stuff. It sounded nice, but it wasn't really something I could comprehend. And you know, today I sit here and I'm free as can be. And the way that I got to this point in my life, and the way that I stay at this point in my life, is through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I've come to realize is a lifestyle. And you know, I was actually listening to the 12 and 12 discuss the 12 step distinctly on the drive over here, and they were talking about the other steps, right? It's like, here I am at step 12, and they reference two-stepping, which is like first step concepts and 12-step concepts, and people getting lost in that, and just service work, service work, service work. But there's the details of those inner steps that really put me in a position to be of maximum service to God. I like to be diligent in those steps as well. And it's only through that process and through that lifestyle that I'm able to sit here and carry a message. You know, as far as a spiritual awakening is concerned, there is a shift in perception that has occurred in my brain. Like mentally, I think completely different. And it's not a result of what I typically would try to implement, which would be like self-will. So in the early stages of this process, I would try to figure everything out or control and dictate the outcome of all of these circumstantial things in my life. And I did a lot of trying to arrange the external life. And I didn't do a lot of looking inward to look at myself and see what was flawed within myself. In this process, I learned to look inward, and I learned to go to that first. And I learned to rely on a higher power, right? This concept, this idea that's often consistently referenced in this program. And it's only through that reliance upon God that I've had a spiritual awakening. It's not anything other than that. And I have to be clear about that, and I'm never confused about that. As much as I would love to think that I figured something out, that was not the case. God has worked tremendously in my life and the people's lives around me through Alcoholics Anonymous distinctly, to get me to where I am and to help me have this psychic change. If somebody would have just said that to me at face value, I would have been baffled. So fortunately for me, I met quite a few people who really tried to break this down to me and help me get to the point of being willing to even pursue living in accordance to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did a lot of showing up to meetings. I felt God. I could tell God was around, God was near, but I wasn't able to have that inner peace and that experience within myself where God was truly embraced by me. I was completely blocked off. Eventually, through a lot of pain and suffering, I was able to sit across from an alcoholic who was armed with the facts about himself and who understood what it was that I was suffering from. And he was able to help me free up a little bit of this stuff and turn my life over to this concept, this idea of a higher power, right? God. And in that process, it took practice. I was not able to necessarily just like do everything perfectly the first time. If you're anything like myself, that's your default setting. I had a lot of fear in the early stages of this process. For me, it was difficult to think about, like I put a lot of pressure and weight on myself to think about the outcome or the circumstances. I had to succeed. That was my mentality. And I'm very fortunate to have a sponsor that simplified this for me, where he kind of showed me, like, we're going to be, distinctly one time he said, Eric, we're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. We need to make solid efforts on a day in and day out basis to progress forward and to grow. And that was extremely helpful to me. And through these practices and going up into my inventory and learning some distinct truths about myself, and then having that moment to turn some of those things over to God and being willing to turn some of those things over to God, and having the experience of some of those things cropping back up and experiencing deeper levels of humility and understanding that God had to be the center of all this, because I tried to run the show for a long period of time and it never really got me anywhere. That's what got me to have that spiritual awakening. That's what got me to start to have this freedom that I began to experience. I was able to navigate life differently. I was able to navigate resentments, fears. I'm now mindful of my selfishness. And when I cause harms or when I get into these funks, I have a program in place. I have a lifestyle in place that allows me to get free of it. And at first, it took me a little bit to get free of some things, some things quicker than others. But through consistent practice, I'm able to get free of those things extremely fast. And that is a beautiful experience for me. I no longer experience things like triggers. I'm not a prey to misery and depression. I'm able to be of service to people. I can look people in the eyes when I talk to them. Like, these are things that I didn't experience before. I don't wake up in the morning and I'm like baffled by how I'm going to live life or what I'm going to do with life or what is success in life. We tried to carry this message to alcoholics, right? And having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. I think of that, and I think of that process as well. Another thing that was referenced in the 12 and 12, and I kind of touched on this before, was that if you make coffee, if you chair a meeting, or if you just have a conversation with somebody in a meeting, someone you can see is struggling or suffering, or you say hello, like, that actually is bridging the gap, and helping them get closer to God. It truly is 12-step work. Of course, we all love the sitting across the table from somebody, reading the literature, and having those heart-to-heart moments. And those are equally as good and more often than not more powerful. But I was listening to that on the way over here, and that was a remarkable thing to really reflect on, because of all of the people that have helped me, and they don't even know that they helped me. all of the people in Alcoholics Anonymous that smiled to me, that shook my hand when I walked into a room and I was scared to death, that made coffee for me, because maybe the only thing that I really enjoyed in that meeting was the coffee, right? In those early stages, I didn't see a lot of value in this lifestyle or anything. So sometimes having a nice donut or maybe a cigarette if I ever smoked or something like that was the only thing I really had to hold on to. But I remembered somebody being like, hey, you want a donut? You want some coffee? You want a cigarette? I don't know. There's a variety of things that people do with newcomers, and I'm very grateful for those things. And I was thinking about that on the way here, and I've also had the experience of not having anyone to sit across from at a table, no one to read the big book with, and maybe I was just in a dry spell as far as sponsorship was concerned. And you know, I really try to, it talks about practicing these principles in all of our affairs, and that kind of goes hand in hand with this, right? And there's different components of that. Like, of course, there's people outside of Alcoholics Anonymous that I can be loving and tolerant towards, and I can be a beam of light in their life, beacon of light. I don't know what the correct terminology is. But it's encouraging to look for those opportunities, and it's also encouraging that people encouraged me in that regard as well. Like, well, Eric, you know, you are showing up and you are being a happy, joyous, and free person around these people in the recovery. Like, I go to the recovery houses and I try to just give a little bit of hope. We don't always have to sit down and read the big book. We don't always have to like be full on AA. Sometimes you can just live the life alongside people and it starts to register. I had that experience with people, as I mentioned before, at Conscious Contact here on Saturday nights. There were a lot of people that were just living this lifestyle, like just doing their thing. They might not have even seen, I mean, we were all pretty aware of everyone that's here. We have a good time. But they were just living their lives. And I know for a fact a lot of those people don't understand the impact that they had on me simply by just living this way. And I don't forget that. So I try to use that that experience, and I try to be mindful of that experience everywhere I go in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I also try to encourage some of the guys I'm working with or that I'm walking alongside in this life with. Say, I don't have any sponsees, Eric, and da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, show up at the meetings, be of service, find the newcomers, seek them out, go get them. Have those conversations, ask them about themselves. And it really taught me what altruism was in having, like, it's cool that they say we tried to carry this message, because it gives some beautiful foreshadowing as to what it is we're up against. Sometimes we forget that we're alcoholics. Sometimes we think, I'm just going to help people and everything like that. And the best thing I can do is tap into my inner alcoholic self when I go to make that approach to help somebody else. And my experience with distinctly working with people one-on-one, right, was that I didn't always succeed, right? I thought to myself, what is success in this regard? And I remember I called my sponsor, Ron, who's here with us tonight, and I remember I said, you know, I feel like I'm losing people. I feel like I'm losing people in the book, and I don't know. And I was definitely complicating it. I'm a very complicated thinker. And he said, well, Eric, you know, like, before the book existed, there were two guys speaking the language, sitting across from each other, you know, carrying a message of depth and weight, having a heart-to-heart conversation. And he's like, just keep that in mind, you know, when you're sitting down with these guys. And I also, in reflecting upon that conversation, was thinking of altruism and what that means. And today I understand that it's just this is all a practice. This is all something that I'm practicing. And furthermore, it's not for me to define the wins and the losses, because I have no idea how God is going to work in somebody's life, especially an alcoholic. Like I said before, there are people that have drastically impacted the course of my life that have no idea that they did that. Because at face value, right, I can reflect upon an experience. I sit down with the guy. He's as nice as can be. Really nice guy. We're going to sit down. We're doing my fifth step. We do my fifth step. I disappeared. I'm missing. I'm on websites. Nobody can find me. And That guy did exactly what he was supposed to do. Exactly what he's supposed to do. He tried to carry a message, right? And I just wasn't receptive to it initially. But I had the experience and that deeper level of humility sink into me when I hit, like, people refer to these situations like bottoms, right? I had this circumstantial situation. I'm kind of like in a rough spot. And when the dust settles and everything, and I have this moment of clarity to kind of reflect on what had just occurred to me, I remembered there was another option. There was another course that I could have taken, but I was powerless. And I didn't have the willingness to pursue it. And that meant a lot to me. And I didn't forget that when I came around. I was like, man, what a beautiful lesson to learn. And I was fortunate to be alive to have that in my arsenal, that deeper level of humility to utilize coming back into this. And I had a lot of those experiences. So when I think of trying to carry this message to other alcoholics, I have to understand what altruism is, and the fact that it's not for me to go and collect a paycheck on Friday. This is God's work. This is not Eric's work. And that's with that in mind, and with that humility of what it is to be an alcoholic, I feel I have done things beyond what I could ever do, right? And again, that's through a reliance upon God. And practicing these principles in all of our affairs. There are people that meet me in my life, some people in this room that have never seen me struggle. And the way that they interact with me, or the way that they see me, or that they trust me and things like that, it's baffling to anybody who really knows what I've been through. And I've also had the experience of people who know what I've been through see me, and they're just shocked. So for instance, there's people like my family, and there's a healing that occurs in this. Like, my family has watched me go through horrible, horrible, horrible things, and I've caused significant harm in their lives. But they also have had the experience of organically watching me and going and living this way, right? Like, it wasn't because they were watching, but like something happened and the trickle-down effect, and they became aware of how I was living. And that's a message of hope and recovery. Furthermore, there are women who I don't know on a personal level, but my mom has sat with, and they prayed for me, and they were thinking of me, and they have children, husbands, significant others who are out there suffering. There are other people who I have no baseline, there was no previous interaction with, and they've met me, and I've been, as a result of these steps, in a position to be of maximum service to God, and I've been able to find those moments and to meet them in places, and kind of navigate them towards a higher power solution. And that's just God. I mean, it's just absolutely God, and that's just carrying this message. I can't even put it into words. I'm actually at a loss of words thinking about some of the experiences that I had, but that gives people hope that have hoped for me when I didn't have hope for myself. And it kind of carries this torch. It carries this message and this hope to other people, because I know for a fact there were times when my mom was at that breaking point. I know for a fact that there are people who aren't alcoholics who are walking in and out of a Wawa who are at that breaking point. And I might be able to help God's children in those places if I'm in a position to be of maximum service to God. That is my purpose in life today. Not just to help alcoholics, which we are all uniquely equipped to do. All of the dark things that have defined me for my entire life, and people that have been at Thursday night, they know that I think this way. Those things that haunted me for my entire life, when I got sober, they didn't go away. I didn't delete any of those things. I'm still a suicide survivor. I'm still that guy that crashed a couple of cars. I'm still the person that was homeless in his hometown, and his family was pretty well known, and it was embarrassing, right? But God has helped me be at peace with those things. And God has helped me mend those situations and continue to amend those situations. And I'm also able to take those things and meet alcoholics or people right there where they are at. And everybody has their story and everybody has their situation. In doing that, my soul has healed. My soul has healed tremendously. Those things are now at peace. And I continue to keep them at peace, and I continue to live differently in all of my affairs in that regard. But what it has done is it has given all of those dark things a purpose, and it talks about our primary purpose: stay sober, help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. And it's amazing to me that my mom has tried so hard to help me. My mom has tried so hard to just push me in the right direction a little bit. My family has tried so hard. Ex-girlfriends have tried so hard. Friends have tried so hard. People I used to work with, associates, have tried so hard. People I met in detoxes and rehabs have tried so hard to encourage me. Counselors, people at Building 50, doctors, psychiatrists, they were trying to give me meds so I wouldn't be suicidal any longer. All of these things, people were trying and trying their best, right? How can I possibly help this person? And here comes an alcoholic. Here comes one of us, right? This person who was considered one of the most hopeless, defective human beings walking the face of the earth. And they sit down and they have a conversation with me. And they meet me right in that place. And they carry this message of hope and recovery to the best of their ability, right? They don't know if it's going to sink in and work. They're sitting across from a maniac who's homeless in his car, trying to sell brand new shoes that I got during a small period of sobriety. And they're just showing up. They're just showing up. They're just trying to carry a message of hope and recovery. And they get through to me, right? I look at them and I'm like, I know this person gets it. And I know that they're free from what it is that I suffer from. I know they've once suffered the way I suffer, and I know they are free of it, and they don't look like they look like they're enjoying it. They look happy, joyous, and free. And with that encouragement, it motivates me when I'm in that position, right? That jump off point, and with that willingness, that ability to be honest, and that open-mindedness. And they say, hey, you can come walk alongside me. This can be real for you. This is something that's real out here. It exists. It's a true thing. If I did not believe that, I would not come out here tonight when Chris asked me. If I didn't believe that that could exist for every single person in this room, out in the world, alcoholics at bars, people ready to jump off a bridge or whatever else is going on in their lives, I wouldn't come out here and talk about it. I'll be watching the Eagles game, right? Or something else like that, you know? And I'm very serious when I say that. I thoroughly believe that in all my heart and soul. I had a cool experience. I'm gonna close with this, and then I'm gonna close with something out of the book. But you know, it was funny. Like I said, Ron actually was one of the people that met me at that diner, and they present this way of life to me, and they're like, hey, look, we can, you can do this if you want, if you're willing, give us a call. And they weren't sure. And before, I was like, I still got to do things, and we all started laughing, and they get up from the table, and he's like, they go and do their thing, and I go and do my thing. I said, I'll go tomorrow. Famous words, I'll go tomorrow. And before we walked away, Ron had CDs. And one of the CDs that he had was Ante. It was a buddy of mine, an acquaintance of mine that I met through my buddy Chuck. And he's like, I got these AA CDs. And I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll take them. Well, I did listen to Ante's CD. And in Ante's CD, he referenced a relapse after a fairly decent period of time sober. And then after that, he went out to Lancaster and blah, 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 this whole story, right? He's telling his story. And I'm like, man, that's Ante. He's hilarious. And that's my buddy. I was like, man, I didn't know he relapsed too like that. And it's kind of similar to my situation. And so I ended up going to rehab. I get out of rehab and I'm like, let's go, Ron. Show me how you're living, please. And we jump into the 12 steps. We jump into service work. There's other people, Ryan, Nick, there's all these people around me that are showing me this lifestyle. and I'm having this experience, and I'm having this awakening. And Ante reached out to me, and I guess he heard. He's like, I guess Eric's doing pretty decent. He's like, come speak for me down in Port Fishington. And I got to go down there and speak for him and tell the story, right, of altruism, people just showing up. I got to tell the story of trying to carry this message, right? And it was funny. I said, it's like, I don't know if Ron knew when he was here on, I don't know, I think it was a Conscious Contact group, when he's recording the CDs, like I know how Ron thinks. He's very hopeful. Like, he believes this with all of his heart and soul. He puts a lot of energy into this. It's extremely inspiring. But he's making these CDs. He hands me the CD. He doesn't, he's like, I don't know, it's an alcoholic. He might throw it out, frisbee golf or something like that. So it's like, I don't know. He tried to carry a message, right? Ante shows up trying to carry a message. He probably didn't even know Ron was going to record the message, right? But I get to go down there and speak for Ante, and I joked about it, and I was like, I don't think Ante knew that his AA mixtape was going to compel me to move my feet quicker in a direction of recovery. I don't know if Ante knew his AA mixtape was going to inspire me to really dive into this head on. And thinking of that experience, and I have so many of these cool experiences, but there's a line in the big book. It says, they believe in themselves, but furthermore in the power that pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. And that has been my experience, and that is what I believe wholeheartedly, is that everybody in this room has a nice little story. As sometimes people think they have a simple story, sometimes people's are over complex, but we have this baseline of what it is to be an alcoholic or just a human being suffering spiritually. And we can meet people where they're at, and we have that ability to go to those places humbly and altruistically and carry this message. And they believe in themselves, and furthermore in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. But even beyond those stories and our personal experiences is God alive and well in the world, in these rooms, working and accessible to anybody who seeks him. And that is why I come out here tonight, and that's why I feel very fortunate to be here with you guys who are also walking alongside of me in this way of life. Thank you.
All right, please limit your sharing to 3 minutes. Please keep your shares related to the step 12. If you feel like drinking, or if you have had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. We ask that you please refrain from the use of profanity. We are in a church and on a spiritual journey. And now I open the room to you.